Business?
We could talk about some stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
The mayor can't make a quorum? No. They can have a workshop without a quorum, can't they?
Yeah, as long as we don't do.
We don't do any
Yeah,
business.
but I mean, like, even, there's even a question if you try to set the next meeting.
What?
There's even a question like, if you try to set the next meeting.
I'll let them carry the water.
I don't know if she's gonna be here. Should I go to? We might have. She's gonna be here. We might have one.
What is it?
It's a thing that says Christmas, so.
Who's it from?
I don't know.
We'll put it in her mailbox. I'll text her and let her know it's here. I'm sorry, you each get a full row. Take your row.
What's that? Oh, I know. 3/4 of the freaking company. They'll be shut down in a year. Because they're being sued by every state.
Your hills are in the packet, that's what they're there.
Yeah, I had Boston call me. No, if I could hire him. He goes, if I get a job, I just got laid off.
So did you say you thought Dan was going to?
I didn't hear from him.
I didn't hear from
Who was it for?
Is it? I swear. Let's get her in here then. Oh, these don't work.
Oh, the electric car, that belongs to Tom Salberg.
Thank you.
That Prius thing.
Public can't hear us.
Oh, here's Dan.
Oh, there he is.
It's election night.
Well, let's all stand up.
It's election night.
Ed volunteered to lead the prayer.
You bet. Father in heaven, we're grateful for this opportunity to come together to speak of this place we call home. Inspire in us imagination and wisdom to listen and to do the right thing. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we thought you could share those. Or it's a bouquet.
Pass it around here.
Happy Valentine's Day. There we go.
Thank you,
So you want to pass it around?
I think I got one.
Okay.
That looks wonderful. So we're going to, sir, he reached out to me, he said he's not gonna make it tonight. Chris said that she may or may not, due to some work challenges, and then Bob will not make it either.
Motion to excuse.
Motion to excuse.
And a second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, there we go. The agenda's there.
Approve the agenda before you do.
Second.
Opposed, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There we go. Strategic planning workshop, highest priorities. Katie?
So you should all have, and I think we emailed it to you a couple weeks ago, is a spreadsheet. And we'll put it up on the board, but you can't read it. So if you're in the audience and you want to follow it, I have some.
I handed out.
Oh, you handed some.
Except for chief, I didn't want to give them one.
So this is a recap of everything that you came up with the last workshop. And we did our best to put them into categories, but, you know, they are what they are. And so, and you guys can do the next step however you want. What I thought we could do is talk about, pull out the ones that you think are the highest priorities, and I would record them here. I know that not every council member is here tonight, so, you know, this might be the first step, and then we'll have to get feedback from Councilmember Kaminskas, Cedars, and Moore on what they think are the highest priorities, and I can do that outside of the meeting. So that's what I'm thinking, but if you guys think of something different,
I would like to recommend that what we go over tonight, possibly make this an extension into our next workshop, and we'll have the benefit of the rest of the council here. So they don't feel like they're eliminated, and get everybody on the same page.
so we could do a little bit tonight and then pull it into the next one. So RJ's doing his best to pull it up. So we basically came up with 7 categories. I'll just touch on those. The first one has to do with business, services, and economic development. The second category, we heard a lot about family focus, health and welfare, civic pride and aesthetics, so we kind of grouped those all together. Financial, so there's a lot of questions about, our sustainability and the resources that we have. Then asset management, this is taking care of those assets that we own, facilities, parks, streets, buildings, those kinds of things. What about our assets, what assets do we have, what assets do we need, what assets do we have that we don't need, all of those things. And then the fifth category is citizen engagement. So this touches on our ability to communicate and connect with our community, hear what our community has to say, understand what our community thinks are our priorities, and also talks about transparency, where when we conduct business, when we do outreach, when we have a project, there's so many different ways that we try to engage our community, and I think we're getting better at that. I know we still have a long way to go, but between our Facebook and our Notify Me and our message board, I just see us growing more and more all the time in that effort. Then we have external factors, and those are things that we don't necessarily have control over. I received today from GSI, and I'll certainly share it with all of you, if you want it. I never know whether or not GSI sends it to you, but it was from the White House, talking about the capital investment that President Trump was going to be funding. Talked about the infrastructure, talked about how he was going to accelerate the delivery time and the application time of projects. It's a lot of data. I got it from, like I said, GSI, their federal legislative, what do you want to call them?
Obvious.
Lobbyists, thank you. Did you guys receive it by chance?
I think so.
Did you? Okay. I mean, it's a lot of data. I didn't want to print it. It was a lot of information about priorities. But so not only, from Washington, D.C., we also have outside influences from the state of Olympia, or excuse me, the state of Washington from Olympia. And then we also have things that are going on in our region between Spokane County, Spokane Valley, are doing things as well. And we don't always have control over all of that. So we wanted to identify that. And then finally we had other, and we don't have a lot of things in there, but I think Odin brought up defining our boundaries and options and intent as it comes to our corporate boundaries. So that was and the need for information. So we kind of put that in the catch-all. So we tried to capture everything the best we could. And so what I thought, not to identify by priorities the categories, but maybe to focus in on what you think are the highest priorities of the subcategories under those. So that's what I was thinking.
It's a good start in.
Okay.
Good start in.
When I like when you look at the different categories, the ones, depending on your color decision on this or not, green, brown, gray, I think you've really highlighted some of the items that are going to be of importance. Diverse sales tax revenue, future income source is going to be a big factor of mine.
Okay, let me capture that.
It's a highlighted column in
Okay,
green.
the highlighted are ones that show up in multiple columns.
Right, but
Okay.
you have your yellow columns on that one, but what's not shown is, on ours, we can see a green bar.
Gotcha.
The green isn't, for whatever reason, it's
not
not projecting it on this picture
Right.
here. It's there on the computer, everyone has a hard copy.
I'm sorry, so
So I'm going to
Yeah.
start capturing, so what I heard Councilmember Bergner say is that you think sales tax, did I hear that?
Diverse sales tax revenue and future income resources. As I've spoken in the past, I've discussed, not just where we are financially in the next year, 2 years, but where we're going to be at full growth. That's going to be a significant importance from my perspective as we look into the future of where we want to be as a city.
And later on today, when we talk about resource allocation and also, what's the last item on the agenda tonight? RJ has some information on sales tax that we want to share with all.
Well, I think that along those lines where we talk about future income sources and diverse sales tax, that kind of falls in line with the business side of things. What businesses do we want to bring into our city? We have to be looking for great businesses to recruit into the city, if you will, while at the same time not creating extra burden on our infrastructure. So what do I mean by that? if we were to put a Walgreens or a Costco in Liberty Lake, while I would love to have a Costco closer, it could have a significant impact on our community from a traffic standpoint and everything else. So we've got to be responsible from that perspective of what's coming into our city from a business perspective, to the point that it doesn't spread that too thin and cause the citizens to be in an uproar.
make some good points. You know, if I might, I think one of the biggest things that bothers me at this point, while we're trying to set priorities, some of the things I've heard in the past make me question the soundness of our decisions to move forward from today on without knowing what's going to happen when the city reaches that apex. And we know it's just a few years out. So, in my mind, we're planning on capital items, we're planning on bringing business in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we haven't even answered how are we going to survive 5 to, 8, 10 years out? Okay? When we start going into negative numbers. And is it responsible of us to be making this type of activity prominent without first solving the question of how are we just going to stay stable just as we are, just today, 2018? How are we going to stay stable in 2021, providing the same services we already are obligated to provide, much less others? And you're right that the only way we're going to address that issue is by taxes. And it's got to be sales taxes. Do we have, what other choices do we have, Mayor, besides sales tax? I mean, like I asked
Property
before,
tax, you could go
well,
back and pick up your,
a little bit, yeah, but
mean,
still, and I'm not complaining about leaving the 60,000 or whatever that we've left over the years.
no, I'm just saying, but I mean, those
You
are,
could go back.
you have three.
Okay. What about the gas tax? What about,
RJ's
because
chocolate.
I'm torn, because we can tax the people to death,
Correct.
but we only have so many options. And before we do anything else in 2018, we don't even know if we're going to be able to survive 2021.
So some of the forecast, remember it is a forecast. So the revenue numbers are conservative. Expenditures,
And that's the way it should be.
so we want to do that. So even though the forecast does show 3-4 years out, if that percentage of that negative is lower on the scale, there's areas we were able to respond. As for the revenue side, Mayor alluded, we have the property tax. Now, we currently have a bank capacity that you can go into, and I think there's
Right.
probably about 100 and, I have to go back and look at the number, but I think there's like 150,000 bank capacity that you can act on today, but you're right, it taxes the citizens. Plus, we're well below our maximum limit. So if you
Now,
would,
well below our maximum limit of what?
it's property tax.
Property
I'm sorry.
tax.
Our statutory limit is $2.10 per thousand, we're at $1.60. So if you're looking at what other tax sources you have in there that are more inside your control, the property tax is one that is inside your control. Utility tax is the other one. We're at 3%. The max is 6%. On those 5 utilities we charge. We don't charge our utility tax on water and sewer. Those are always options out there. But if you're looking at options of where am I going to get more money, those are more inside your city's control. The Harvard Road mitigation fee is another one that you can go back and analyze. Is that paying for the infrastructure that comes in? That one's inside your control. Sales tax gets a little trickier because it's not longer in your control. You're dealing with property that you're trying to stimulate investment. So you're trying to do everything you can to get whatever needs to be built on these places out there. But we can't change the rate internally. That would be something that the state legislature would have to say, well, now we'd let you go up to this extra percentage. Or you can go out for a vote of the people to maybe increase the sales tax a little bit. But the cities themselves are stuck at a statutory rate. The gas tax is another one that is set by the state. we can't increase that. And we don't get it based on how many gas stations we have. It's based on population base. Building permits, we know, is
It's
only
based on population, it's not even based on gallons used or.
not inside the city.
Bulk.
Correct.
How about spread out?
It's per capita.
Per capita. I think one of the issues that
Did I answer your question?
my thought here is this, as I was listening to what you were saying. Look at what are those things that the city delivers today that are gonna change in the future? So, for instance, we're plowing the roads. So how many more roads are we gonna be plowing in the future? If we're plowing all the roads today and we look at, if the homeowners association is gonna take care of some of that other stuff over in the district or whatever our growth areas are, we're not gonna be plowing those roads. So our somewhat can be somewhat fixed where we're at right now. Same thing with people. I mean, how many people does it take to do what we're doing? As we got green space, it's gonna take more temporary and things like that, but are we gonna have a greater staff to administer that to our growth? And what I see in my head is that growth will catch up, or will continue to provide cash, but I don't necessarily see the additional expenses. Maybe that you find the only variable would probably be the police force, and again, that's associated with our community and that, we have problems or issues. But I don't see the nexus to our current financial state 10 years out that says we're just going to handle more cash coming in. Well, the building will probably continue to peter out at some point in time. But I think overall, the utility tax as we grow will continue to grow. I mean, we'll get 3%. If we add 1,000 more meters, we get 3,000 more whatever units. So, pardon?
I was just gonna ask something.
But again, I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking about today is, we want to be sustainable. I believe growth will help us be sustainable as long as we're growing outside and we're not trying to go out and annex more territory to take care of. And as we, again, kind of what Gavin Cooley said one time, he says, my cost downtown Spokane is like 25 cents on the road, and on the north side it's $2. It's because of the concentration of the people that are utilizing the services. And so I think that's kind of where we're at in there. Again, going back to look at those opportunities where growth increases the yield of money. Utility tax would be one. Property tax is relatively flat to some extent. And then your sales tax, again, what the commercial, the retail transactions depend on are people with money to spend, disposable income, and spending it. And are we going to be able to capture that here? Well, if we don't have any restaurants here, we're not going to capture the restaurant. And where are the people going to spend the money? I mean,
No, I agree. It's almost like a catch-22.
well, it is somewhat. I mean, it's, like
It's
this.
all certain. Right. No, I agree totally that, and I can see your point very readily, that things tend to go hand in hand. You grow, you bring the cash with you as you grow as well. Right? The only thing I could add to that would be, we have to be mindful that at the same time as this is going on, and we're just bringing the cash along with us as we grow, we're also getting older, which means we're going to have more money to spend on roads that need more attention just because of age. So we'll be digging up more bases and laying more bases for road. We have other infrastructure needs that will change, as we go. So after listening, all we really have control of is, like you say, utility tax and property tax. But the property tax is what it is. The only thing that we can grow is sales and utility. That's it.
Well, of those three items, the one that makes me nervous, of course, is always sales tax. Because that's something we have no control over, other than we can entice businesses to come here and stuff, but also we can bring manufacturing in here, and that really doesn't increase our sales tax. Also, we're unique in the sense that not only we're running 14 to 15% higher in tax than normal, but we're in a unique position where we have the RVs and the autos, which we've discussed before. It can also be very volatile, because reiterating, when I was in the RV business, when the economy started to tank or gas went up, RV sales stopped in a day. They don't taper off. Auto sales taper off over a period of time. What I try to look at is that what our priorities are of existing facilities that we know we have to maintain, and where do we have the money for that? And also, that our wish list comes into it. And I think it's really easy for all of us to get a really outstanding wish list. And we want to provide everything that the citizens want, but it still comes down to how do we pay for it. So I think it's critical that we look at the priorities, that how do we maintain our parks that we have, the parks that are coming online, trailhead, things of the sort here, and how do we pay for that? And maybe slow down a little bit on mini parks or a lot of other things we would like to have as time goes on. You know, there's such a statement you hear that people say, well, they'll build it and they will come. To do that, you gotta have money up front to do it. So we will hit a build out at some point. When I see the projections, just common sense is that if our expenses are growing, let's say 3%, and our revenue grows at 1 to 2%, you don't have to be a financial genius to realize we're up, that puts us upside down. So I think we have to be very astute on what we're going to spend our money on and what new things we would want to spend our money on.
Mary, you had mentioned, and I just want to get a point of clarification on it, snow removal, and this is only one item, obviously, and the HOAs being involved. Were you talking more private on that, or were you talking, trying to work with the HOAs as a whole body to pay for it? I can't even get them to pay for a sidewalk, let alone snow removal.
I don't think we can look to the HOAs to provide really any material services.
Right, and that's why I want a point of clarification,
Public
because you said
roads are
HOA and
maintained
snow
by-
removal, so.
Well, what I'm saying is that, I don't know exactly how the snow removal takes place, and I know in our HOA, we pay for
You pay it.
Right.
it, right? And I know that, I think Mike's, you
So
pay
we-
for your stuff.
Private roads are maintained by the
Right.
HOA, and public roads are
The
maintained by
estates
the
on the north side and so forth.
Same with maintenance, snow
So
removal.
we already know which ones are gonna be private and which ones aren't. So
We have a good
we can
handle on it.
project on that, obviously.
One of the things that you may want to focus on, I guess, and as a policy, is how do we get more, as we develop. Well, I think in Stonehill, we don't take those streets on, do we?
There's one major street that goes through there that's public, the rest are private.
Yeah, so I mean, again,
Legacy
we're
Ridge is
looking at how
private.
that develops.
Your
What
Blue
is-
Lip
what's
is
our
private, Live is
responsibility?
private,
So,
Earl Lago's
We have a
private,
lot, yeah, thank goodness.
Trutina's private,
yeah, so I mean, you're only gonna be taking care of the core, and then how much you gonna take care of the core? How
Right.
many, we're gonna have a full city plow, we'll always take care of the core, but we may, as you look down, 20 years down the road, are we getting out to the
So I was gonna
cul-de-sacs?
mention something as I was listening to Odin talk, and, because you're asking really good questions. And over the course of many years, and I know Chief has worked many years, and RJ, you've worked many years, Pamela and Jen is, cities are very resilient, I'll say that. And it's not that we're flush with cash, it's not that we like to overspend, but economies and cycles, I know I've lived through the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and all that. And cities are resilient, and elected officials can make good priority decisions. And sometimes when the economy's tough, you have to tighten your belt, and you have to question your core services and say, public safety, taking care of our roads. Spokane has had challenges for decades because of deferred maintenance on roads, and we all know we don't want to, blast them for that. But over the many, many years, they just kept deferring maintenance on their roads, and it got very, very expensive, so then they had to pass the bonds. But I'll tell you, in the state of Washington, I don't think I've ever seen a city go bankrupt. I could be wrong, Mayor, do you know of it? I'm not aware of any, there's a few in
Couple
California
of
that did.
business, I'm sure.
But cities are very resilient, and we make good decisions, and we don't have all the answers 10, 20 years out, or even 5 years out, but we get good information, we have good handle of our income, our expenses. And with councils that decide what the priorities are, we focus on what's best for our citizens, what's best for our community, and what we can afford to
I
own
think-
and operate.
I don't disagree with you. I think what we don't want, and to Mike's point, is we have to be cognizant of where we're gonna be at in 5 to 6 years based on that growth and those stops with those big ticket items. Because there are cities that have shut down significant resources. Newport Police Department had their own police department. They got rid of it. Now they're trying to bring it back because they were relying on county to handle it.
Medical Lake, I think, did the same
Medical Lake
thing.
did the same thing, so, you know, I know that that's kind of an extreme, but we need to be cognizant of this, so we aren't running into these issues.
Just regarding the second column, category 2, when I consider the observations we brought forward, to me, I'd elevate sense of community and quality of life focus family. Those stand out as characterizing many of what I think the elements we've observed in that category 2 are.
Sense of community, family, and
Sense of community was one, and then quality of life, family. Those are the
okay.
2 elements I drive up.
RJ, can you remind me, when you looked at the projections that you provided, were those taken into consideration of full build out toward the end?
I didn't go out, the full build out is still out in 15, 20 years. I only went out to 2026, 10 years.
Chair.
And
Chair?
not as, if, I didn't project, the projections don't show if we stay aggressive like we have been over the last 3 years on the building permit. So that is conservative of if we have the same year this year that we did last year, then those projections are already off on revenue.
Because it's kind of common sense that the more residents we get, the more income we get with property tax, utility tax. But I don't want us to be in a position to where we have to necessarily raise utility tax another 3% to try to maintain that level of service if we don't have to. So I think that's important for us to.
So we have some data on sales tax, especially how it compares to other, I'll call cities that are similar to us in some ways. Do we want to put that up now? Because I think there was a good, well, RJ put it together, he did all the research, and so I'll let him kind of explain what he came up with.
Take him to the audience.
Thank you.
It's kind of fascinating when you see it because as far as sales tax, when we compare ourselves to other smaller cities in eastern Washington, sales tax is about 60% of our income right now. So you look at
60%?
60% of our income. Whereas in Cheney and Fairway Heights, much well, one's bigger, one's smaller, but their sales tax is less as a percentage of their total revenue. Now remember, they have utilities, and I know like in Fairway Heights, they get extra dollars from the casino and Cheney has a power and light company and water and sewer. So, RJ, do you want to walk us through this?
Yes, so just want to let everyone know, I did steal this from MRC, and I did set, this gives me, we can get all the cities listed on there, but I just focused on some that we either identified or were places that people would call, I want to kind of live in that town, or local, like Erie Heights and Cheney were local, so I pulled them over there, and I pulled a couple other cities just for comparison purposes. So what this report does, it looks at your total property tax for each of these cities versus their sales tax that they collect. And I sorted it based on cities from the higher retail base down to the lowest retail base. So that would tell you, like, city of Burlington, I don't know if you've ever been there, but they have a lot of autos. They have a lot of high retail. They also have a huge infrastructure problem with that.
Costco.
Costco, yeah.
Where, Burlington, is that Pierce County?
No, it's Skagit County.
Skagit.
It's right north of Mount Vernon, off of I-5. Smaller community. It's an older community. They really went after sales tax. Big shopping area. And now they have significant traffic issues, and they can't afford the infrastructure to fix that.
Which kind of brings up my point that I said earlier.
But see, 76% of their income comes from sales tax.
Right.
So,
Even with ours being almost 60%, it almost reiterates what we were discussing as a concern factor.
But then you go down to the lowest, and I don't want to steal what RJ's
No.
going to say, but then you go down to like Newcastle, Lake Forest Park, very desirable communities on the west side of the state, but they only get roughly a quarter of their income
comes
comes
from
from
sales
sales
tax. So they're more like a bedroom community without the.
Oh, yeah, the property taxes are huge.
Correct.
Yeah, but from what I understand from their cities as well, is that their infrastructure, at least for streets and movement, is better than the cities are more towards the top. One thing I did want to point out on Liberty Lake is you go back to 2012, and this is us coming out of the recession as well, that the split was closer to 50-50, and over the last 5 years, we've seen that sales tax kind of skyrocket. So there's an inequity, but it's more maybe an inequity because of the economy's fine. When the economy goes back down, that percentage will probably go back down. Moses Lake was one, and they're right in the middle. They have a 50-50 kind of blend going for them. This is Moses Lake. One of the things talking with them, and what they do is when they do get a bed box tail retail come in, they kind of have a design of where that's going to go, and they have the infrastructure that can help support it. But usually what they do is they know what the sales tax that one is going to bring in, and they look what projects do we have that we know that we have this revenue source coming in that we can put towards that. So they'll go bond for if they get a new box retail come in for them.
Do we know what Lake Forest, how much higher they are on their property tax?
Well, their assessed valuation is 2.6.
So they're,
75.9% just in the
Right.
property
Yes,
tax.
so they're twice our assessed value.
twice.
Yeah.
As begets Western Washington for property value.
Yes.
So what, in your opinion, RJ, is a good blend for Liberty Lake?
The good blend, from my opinion, is closer to that 50-50 desirability, but especially if you know where your retail is going to be at. So as to, if one of the things, what kind of, you put up there, diverse sales tax base, so what kind of businesses are you looking to bring in? Obviously the Home Depots, the Walmarts, the Costcos, those are big sales tax drivers to bring in, but they also come with the infrastructure problem.
Yeah.
Restaurants are nice, but you need about 20 of them to
Right,
make
to
up
make
for
up
one
one
big
big
box.
Right.
Can we
But-
talk about that infrastructure just for a second? We say, like the company or the city you were describing, I think it was
Burlington.
that I guess what the statement was, they overbuilt and they couldn't handle the infrastructure. We need to know right now, we have certain roads out there that have already been built, we have some roads that are going in by the developers, okay? The roads on the north side are going in by a new commercial area. Can we develop not Liberty Lake Road, but Country Vista, Appleway, can we develop those? Can we develop the area over on Mission and back towards the interstate? Are we in a position that we can actually go out and actively and aggressively try to bring people in to occupy that raw land at this point?
From a business standpoint.
From a business standpoint, or are we just having roads there that we just can't sustain bigger and better and more companies coming in?
So when I look at our job corridor, Appleway from Liberty Lake to Moulter to Townwood, I'll call it, roughly 8,000 jobs every day, people come in and go out. I have to tell you that some really smart people back in the 80s built a lot of capacity in our road system. We do not suffer from a lack of capacity. When I drive down Country Vista as I'm heading west towards Barker, we have so much capacity there, you could build out the whole city and you still would not have a capacity problem. We have an operational problem, and we have a lack of redundancy when it comes to getting north and south of I-90. So it's called circulation, and then the operations of your traffic signals, that's what we need. But I'll tell you, and we haven't used the word road diet, but Appleway and Liberty Lake Road is actually less asphalt than today, and it works better because we were able to channelize people. So we do not have a capacity problem based on the land use. And if you think, and I'm not an expert in this, so I have to disclose that, but when I look at the employers along Appleway, what do you see? Big campus employers where hundreds or thousands of people occupy an office or a tech center or a manufacturing facility. Big, we don't have a bunch of little shops. We have more big scale
That don't bring in
employers
revenue.
that do not bring in revenue. They pay property taxes, and it's nice to have, a lot of people coming in and out of our city, I think, in some ways that's nice. But you're right, they don't bring in, they pay utility tax, they pay property tax.
But if you didn't have the employment base, you wouldn't have the revenue no matter what. Because the jobs are the ones that are, you have to have a sustainable and a growing employment base, to spread out into the communities. And again, looking at, I think you pointed out eloquently a couple of years ago, and, our median income is like $75,000, or 3 times what Spokane is. Right? So I mean, and now it's to capture that revenue within our community, where we lose it right now is, well, I'm guilty, going down to Costco, I'm gonna buy whatever. So, City of Spokane Valley captures my revenue.
Right.
And so we're trying to get that back. And I think the next, which we will see, and we've seen some growth now, but the next 10 years will bring a larger impact of what you would call the Amazon revenue. We're starting to capture that transactional stuff.
So we can put up something and you can see where our sales tax is coming from. I think RJ has that, and he's broken it out. He gets this from the Department of Revenue, and we're able to keep it into categories so that.
Yes, I'll speak to like the Amazon one here in a second. There's option. Try to make it bigger. Sorry.
Control plus.
Control plus. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Learned something new today. So to go through this one real quick. So this actually slide comes off of the quarterly report you get, but the one change that I added a couple things to this one is to break out the retail from what you normally see, which was retail included auto and RV. I separated the auto and RV, so you could just see that separated. And I put a couple, so you've got your 2 retail, and Amazon, as the mayor mentioned, which is really destination sales tax, is coming in. It's in that retail other, and it's been growing at about 25% a year. So it's been really great going back to 2009. It's really stepped up. But if I was to take all the destination-based sales tax, right now it's about $65,000 to $70,000 a year. So while it is growing leaps and bounds, it's going to take it. I think in the next 10 years, the mayor's alluding to, we should see that increase. And there's been legislation on the federal level that we're going to watch, because now there's more teeth to the law nationwide to do this destination sales tax base. So Amazon's been always good, but these mom and pops that sell third-party stuff, they weren't reporting the sales tax, and that's supposed to be cleaned up now. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Department of Revenue actually does track this. And we actually will continue seeing increases. So construction, wholesale trade, food and accommodations, and then on the notes I also lined up a little bit of what all other categories includes for you to look at. There's 2 columns on here on percentage base. In year 2012, what I did is I wanted to show what percentage of each of these categories is of the total sales tax. And on the very end, I did the percentages too. So what I wanted to show is that the there hasn't been much change in the percentage of total sales tax.
Or where it's come from.
Yeah,
Food and
so
accommodation is 6%, is that restaurants?
food and accommodation, that is restaurants and
hotels.
hotels.
So only 6% of our sales tax comes from restaurants and hotels.
Yeah.
As opposed to if you add the auto is 31, almost 32%, and construction is 15, and what's retail other, RJ?
So retail other, so that would be your destination sales tax, that would be your Home Depot, that would be your smaller.
McDonald's would be
options.
involved in that? or-
McDonald's is food and
Food.
accommodations. Yeah. Well, yes, yes, as long as I don't call them out specifically. Okay.
Let me throw one, RJ. Be speculative and say which one of these has opportunity for growth.
Good question.
Retail other. Construction is going to be based on
It's limited.
as long as you got good housing going on there. The auto and RV is subject to the economy, unless we get another auto and RV dealership coming in. Growth is whatever they can right now capacity and sell. More of us here, and this goes to the place for more of us to eat. Food and accommodations will grow, but I think the retail there is with the destination. Because that's the argument you hear out there. We don't have the brick and mortar buildings coming in. People are doing more online shopping, whereas it would be advantageous for us to find one of those to have come in, but people are getting accustomed to the Amazon.
This categorization is based on, what's the source of the information, sorry?
So we get Department of Revenue.
Sweet. Is similar reporting available for the other municipals compared for population? I mean, like,
I
what's their
can't.
breakdown?
Yes, but it's dated, so I could get 3 or 4 years back. So.
It'd be an interesting comparison to consider for the reference of the population plus the proportions, how does the comparison then of sales tax and where this category is in? Again, speculating, recognizing what are the areas for growth.
So I look at this, Councilmember Dunn, and look at 2012, construction was 10% of our sales tax revenue. This year was a bumper year. We had a treatment plant for 16 million, lots of new
School was
construction,
finishing
the school was several $1 million, lots of single-family houses, and it only went up to 15% of our sales tax revenue.
Yeah, so I wouldn't bank, so to speak, or make predictions or try and focus attentions on construction per se. Just wouldn't seem.
I mean, they really are parallel 2012 to 2017. You know, in the perfect world, I would like to see freeze property tax, freeze the sales tax rate, and then bring people into the city to spend more money. Okay? Raise the sales tax. It relieves, or at least plateaus what the residents are actually spending here, other than their own sales tax.
So
But that's a perfect world, and I don't know how we would ever get there at this point. Just to say, this is your tax rate, that's what it's gonna be, we're not gonna mess with it. This is what, we're gonna rely on other people coming in or new people moving in.
yeah, to consider bringing more people into the city, would you recognize residents or jobs which bring people transiently into the city for a period?
Both, yeah.
There's no
But
creates traffic.
we got to, look, we can do any of these projects. We can do any of them. All it takes is what? Money.
What the
So-
city needs, is what I've always said, is a good casino manager.
There you go.
Because as long as you come in here and play the game and get the transactions going across, you're taking your 2 or 3% cut.
Yeah, I'd like to say something, as long as we've lived in Liberty Lake, I've always been very pleased to see what the council, staff, mayor, always attempts to do. What we're doing right now is discuss the options and how can we make it better. That's one of the great things that I want to identify right off the bat, trying to get that accomplished. But also, we all know we just basically have 3 sources of revenue. And our biggest source of revenue is the retail sales tax. And it's the one area that the citizens get the most nervous about. And what I mean by that is that if we look at bringing businesses into town, that means developers. If we look at bringing storefronts in town, that means developers and investments. And it's the one area that people want to shy away from, because it's kind of felt that if the apartments go in and social media attacks the council and the mayors, that we're in bed with the developers. And yet that land was zoned for that long before we were ever a city. So I think what we have to realize, and maybe start taking an attitude in, that we need to work with developers. If it wasn't for the few developers we have, we wouldn't have the residential areas we have in this town. It wouldn't be there. If we try to discourage that type of business, the developers will go elsewhere because they'll find land. And there goes one of our huge sources of revenue, property tax and sales tax. Now, I don't mean we have an open city here to these individuals, but we work with them to say, what do you see, where would you like to have your company expand? Where's the businesses that you built restaurants for restaurants to come into? They already know people who are looking to expand. Those are the individuals it's important we build relationships with. To say, you built 3 restaurants for this one chain. We'd like to sit down and consider if they'd be willing to build in Liberty Lake. The challenge is going to be is that some citizens will look at this and go, oh my God, we're letting them take over. We have to bridge the gap to our citizens to say, there's a blend here that we're trying to do. And some years we're going to do it right, and some years we're not.
Well, I'm sure that somebody could tell us, that's a much smarter guy than I am, could tell us that for every dollar retail that comes in is saving X number of dollars property tax. Is that, am I even on the right line? That there's a relationship between
Well,
increase of this and savings on this side?
no, but I mean, again, it's the big picture, right? We only tax people for what we spend, theoretically. So if we don't spend a nickel, there'll be no taxes out there. But we have to spend some nickels. And so if you start to try to figure out how do you maintain that quality of life and the safety that we want, we set our levels of expenditures. And we tax appropriately for that. And if you can boost the sales tax revenue, then the property tax revenue doesn't have to go up. For the utility taxes, as we get more people on cell phones and blah, blah, blah. We looked at, over the last 4 or 6 years, right? We put $100,000 of garbage money, call it money into the deal. Aquifer money we put into the deal. What else we put into the deal, Katie? I mean, we've added about $300,000 or $400,000.
Well, we brought in outside money to fix our roads.
And
We
$7.5 million.
save money on our city garbage bill, and we get revenue from their profit.
So, I
And
mean,
then we brought in aquifer
that's
protection and
how we've
stormwater
been able to
fees.
maintain our property taxes to where they're at. You know?
Because of the blend.
Because of the blend.
The blend,
And then-
absolutely.
And then,
So it's a
and the
savings
other thing,
job.
we talk about looking, you can sit down and take your existing source of revenue. But, one of the things, the policy decision the council made a long time ago, we're gonna make our gambling tax 15%. This is back in 2003 or 2004. There were 4 card tables, and home plate, the legend is now, brought in over $100,000 a year to the city. It's all gone now, we don't get a nickel. But, I mean, these are look for the other sources that we can get, where they can come from, and that's just one piece of the puzzle. And I think the other thing that you're seeing right now is that maybe our residential is starting to somewhat mature, at least for, and we're also starting to get, I've had a number of conversations in the last 2 or 3 months about the north side commercial property and corporate park commercial property. So we're starting to see, hey, oh God, look, we do have put 240 new apartments going in there. Now we're seeing a build out of some new commercial.
There's more interest in
property.
the commercial property at the west end of town
And
than
then
there
Jim,
has been.
then Greenstone's plan over on the north side is the village. And he's been here and he made the presentation basically on the artisan center. So an artisan center is basically where you have the people to make the breads or the small craft type center. Well, all of a sudden that becomes a place of destination.
Right.
And then that's gonna help benefit the community, plus also creativity. You know, and continue to fill the houses, I guess, those are.
So just another kind of general comment, and is not meant to be political at all, but I'll just share with you, a lot of our small businesses really struggle here in town, and it's because of the cost of doing business in the state of Washington, from benefits to minimum wage to L&I to unemployment, and I get phone calls, not all the time, but sometimes from some of the small local businesses that can barely afford to pay their rent, and it's very challenging to be a border city with Idaho, and there's a big difference in, if I'm going to be an employer or a retail, where am I going to go? What side of the border am I going to go on? And it's a business decision, and sometimes it's very difficult for Liberty Lake to compete.
Kind of small businesses, the nut to crack is $5,000 to $8,000 a month. Just to have minimum wage person in there. You know, it's huge.
I think it's important too that we continue to realize that the mayor points out very well is, you know, as the population grows, we're going to have more tax or utility tax things of the sort here. But realize inflation is going to grow also. So I look at those three revenues that, yes, that's going to go up as we get more residents and we build more homes, the property tax is going to go up. But I think that could be earmarked just to take care of inflation and those additional roads and stuff that is there. I think where the revenue has to come from, the extras we want to do for our citizens and the extras the citizens demand has to come from sales tax. And that's in the development of I hate the word strip malls, but I'll utilize that or give an example of what Coeur d'Alene has done down by the lake there, where they have residential stuff upstairs and they have those long businesses along there.
Mixed use.
Mixed use. The last 2 weekends, Benny and I have driven over there, one time Saturday, another time on Sunday. And we just sit there drinking coffee, and we're amazed at the amount of traffic of people going by. Now, granted, we got 47,000 people, and that's a tourist town, and they all end up down by the lake. We wouldn't have that same impact. But for me, I just have to keep in mind, as we could, as we grow and we get more utility tax and sales tax, that's probably beaten up by inflation alone.
We talk about destination place, and I just think it's worth mentioning that we got a couple really lousy examples in Spokane right now, okay? A beautiful idea of the Ribbon Ice Rink, okay?
Do you want me to write down destination?
No, we're just on it, thank you though. And so that happened, okay? I mean, it was a great idea, somebody put it on paper, and now they're sitting back, uh-oh, it's gonna cost a lot of money in medical costs, insurance, etc. So, for whatever reason, now they want to do a zip line. Okay, the whole length of the lake, the river. Okay, has anybody seen dollar signs associated with that? With insurance. So, it may be helping them be a destination place, but they're paying through the yah-yah to make it that way. We're in a much better position that we can actually say we want to be a destination center of this, this, and this, and have foresight enough now to say, oh, we need to make sure that it's not going to come back and bite us in next year, next month, or the day after we open it. But we do have a lot of opportunity along the river. You know, the problem is we don't own much of the land there.
Well, once again, I think that comes into play as the developers look at Spokane, or they look at Liberty Lake, because we have land. They look at where they could do the development, things of the sort here. You know, the average income here is substantially higher than somewhere else. You take a business owner, you know, a comment came up the other day, I was talking to somebody, and this individual went to Legends, not Legends, they went to the Brothers Pizza place over here. And went in and was talking to the owners, they were telling me the story, and asked them, why did you build here versus trying to be over in this area of Yokes and where there was space? And they said, because they looked where the growth was. They realized that there was permits for the apartments, and that whole area is being developed over there, and that's why they chose to put that there. They said, we took a gamble initially before it was built, but realized long-term that we were looking at, and business owners will look at that. To look at it, where's the population? So I think developers also will look at it. Somebody has a restaurant will look and say, I'd love to be in Liberty Lake area. Why? Because they got 11,000 people, the average income's $100,000 a year. And they're family oriented. Great, great marketing. Great marketing, my God.
Well, I think that we have to be smart when we talk about destination. Obviously, we don't want to do something that's going to put us in jeopardy in any way, shape, or form. And I think some of the growth that we've discussed is going to draw people in. But again, going back to what we were saying earlier, that is a small portion of our sales tax. So we're going to need to be cognizant of those bigger ticket facilities. And I'm not saying a Walmart, because that does draw in crazy traffic, but where Home Depot doesn't draw in the same type of traffic. So we need to start directing ourselves in those type of businesses to try to draw them in that are not going to have crazy impacts on our city, but at the same time help offset or balance out better some of these percentages that we're seeing here in case the RVs fall off.
I'd love to see a survey, if we could even do it through the city or something like that, ask the citizens of Liberty Lake, if you go out to dinner or lunch line 3 times a week, do you do it within city Liberty Lake or go outside? I think the number would floors. I think the majority of individuals will say that the majority of the time they're leaving the city to go spend that revenue.
You can see why.
But I think that also kind of reiterates things that we've talked about in the past of trying to help get a better word out there about our local businesses. My wife and I intentionally eat out in Liberty Lake. It's very rare that we eat outside of Liberty Lake. Is it convenient saying? That could be debated. But there's a lot of people that don't even know what we have in our own city and they live here. I can't tell you how many people that had no idea that the Faux place opened up. So we have to do a better job of that to get our residents to shop in Liberty Lake. And I think that I don't think that we're meeting that mark.
Well, again, I mean, we all like restaurants. I like a restaurant, you can tell. But it's only 6%, or
Right.
7%, just to your point.
Right.
I mean, it's nice to have in here. I'd like to have Cracker Barrel down the street,
Right.
but it's 6%. And even if we brought in 4, 5, 6 top restaurants, it's not gonna rise that much.
Correct.
But I think the difference could be is that what we're doing now, because we have the land, and we're addressing this now, we can be prepared for the individuals who want to build the Cracker Barrels, something of that sort there. It's one thing to be in a town that's already built out, and then try to look, where's somebody going to come in? They're going to have to not only buy the land, tear down the buildings to build a new restaurant. We have that. We can offer that growth to the
Yeah,
town,
we
to
can.
entice those to come in. So as we do grow, we can grow along with that. And I think that would make the citizens a lot happier than suddenly have a huge amount of this, a huge amount of that. But look at everything that happened with the apartments. I mean, we filled this room with 100 and some people. Most of them came from the Ridge. And their concern, they were saying, is because of the traffic. In reality, it eventually went and said they didn't want the apartments there. That's what brought the people out, is that they were concerned about something that was touching them very closely. What I think didn't get out to the citizens, let me back up on that, it did get out to the citizens, but they didn't understand it or didn't accept it. I'm on dangerous grounds right now. Katie and the staff did an excellent job of saying that the average percentage of apartments in most, tried for a third in cities. And a third is about 33%. And a report that Katie and her staff come out and said, but at the time, I think we were 29%. And yet the feeling was we had too many apartments, we had to put a freeze on it. In reality, we were in fairly good shape. It was good putting the slow on it.
Just as a thought, because I know we all come from different walks of life and different backgrounds. What I've seen could be helpful is maybe what we could do is reach out to some of our local restaurants, our local business owners. And a lot of business owners play their cards real close to their chest because they're in business and it's competition and everything. But maybe what we could do is have a workshop where they're sharing with you what they need to do better, what they need to do to grow their business, why they chose the relay. Sometimes businesses will tell you, we just need you to stay out of our way, or the sign code, and I know with what we did on I-90.
Yep.
But it's almost, I've always found it very educational to listen to people that are closer to the situation than I am. I'm not a business owner, Mike, I know you were, but I'm thinking what we could invite is some local businesses to come and share their knowledge.
Well, I feel like I'm having some deja vu, because I feel like we've talked about this 3 years ago, right? But we didn't act. We need to act. Now's the time to act. We have to do this now. We've been putting this stuff off, and we've been having these conversations about reaching out to businesses and what can we do and what do they need. But we haven't done anything about it. Let's do something.
We have, we've opened up.
I know, but we haven't, we've even talked about having a meeting with local businesses at one point,
Right.
and we never did that. So we need to move. We need
No,
to
I
do something.
agree, I agree. It's time, it's time, it's a good suggestion. But are they, you know,
I mean, as
Other than
George
what-
Key just expanded and bought another dealership. Invite him here, I don't know him, I think his son runs it, Mayor, do you know him? We could invite him here and say, share with us why you chose to expand in Liberty Lake. What is it that helps your business to be successful? What policies, if any, do we have that help you and or hurt you? I don't know, whatever it is, and
I think
He's
it's
building
great.
a complex out there, basically.
Yeah.
And he bought the Mercedes, so he's got the Porsche dealer, he's got the Mercedes, he's got from low to medium income to high-end stuff.
one day I was driving down I-90.
And he's got I-90,
Yeah.
and he's got access to the freeway within,
looks
Couple
not good
hundred feet.
about it.
Mhm.
that's why he settled out there. He got away from, back in the day, he was down on Sprague, right?
Mhm.
Just
And
recognized.
he moved out here and he was, I had a meeting with a guy the other day and he said, what do you need out here? I said, well, another dealership would help. We can always use more auto dealerships.
That's right.
And I gave him a couple ideas. I mean, there's another opportunity, in classic cars, high-end cars, those things that you can take advantage of. Continue to build upon what's been successful.
When I was driving down I-90 and I looked over at Freedom RV and it was empty. This was a year or two ago and I go, oh my gosh, they're moving. Did a U-turn, I came back and I go, what happened? How come your lot was empty? It was an RV show.
Yeah, thank goodness.
But, RV dealerships, I mean, Airway Heights had an RV dealership. They lost. They didn't even know it was gone until they drove by and it was an empty lot. They moved up to Francis Avenue. But anyway,
One thing Spokane did back in the 90s is that they got a coalition of business owners together. I was one of them, and I was highly impressed. And the city got these individuals together to do brainstorming on what they thought the city could do to assist them. But the format, to me, was the most impressive. They didn't bring it into a room like this with us sitting here, and they sat there. They did it at a big table where everybody was intermingling. And there was a series of about probably 14 or 15 meetings that we had. And different business owners would come in periodically, or they would send their sales manager, whatever the case may be. And that was extremely effective. Because one thing it did do is it let the business owners see a city council member who wasn't there to get a discount on a car. Or anything like that. And it just connected them. That I would certainly recommend because it had a great impact.
Just a word of caution. okay? I think it's a great idea, Katie, right? But at the end of the day, 99.9% of those people that we meet with in this meeting will continue to be small business owners. Nothing wrong with that, okay? But we can't let their needs and wants overshadow the big picture that we're after. We're after the bigger money. Perhaps we could put together something with area managers, okay, that manage 2 or 3 Costco's to come in and sit down and talk with us. Not because they put a Costco here, but they can tell us what they look for, why they settled where they picked. They could tell us the same thing. But they're talking about millions of dollars, not $100,000 a year. Okay, and not that there's anything wrong with that, and I do want to know what we can do to help them. But our drive and our focus still has to be on the big prize, I believe.
So when it comes to retail in Liberty Lake, Dick Vanderbilt owns Dick Vanderbilt Properties, not construction.
Right.
Owns both sides of Liberty Lake Road, the Oaks and the, his office is up on North Spokane in the Mead area. And I'd say probably twice a year I go and I spend maybe 30 minutes with him, just to see what's going on and let him know we have a road project or whatever. He's an incredibly experienced and knowledgeable guy. He's been in business for decades. He owns the Trader Joe complex on 29th. He owns commercial property all over Spokane. I don't know how willing he would be, Mayor, to come in, but he's a commercial developer. He develops commercial property for retail. That's what he does. You know the new grocery store on Kindle Yards off of
Right.
Monroe, and
He's got it.
he was a developer there. So I don't know, maybe he could share with us his view of what would make sense out here. I don't know.
I appreciate your point though, and I'm curious though, have we ever looked at the smaller businesses, the retail, the smaller restaurants, what percent have left Liberty Lake or shut down in Liberty Lake as compared to those that have stayed? Because when we continue to have those ones shut down, then we're trying to fill that void versus continuing to expand them out.
Yeah, I think if you maybe step back and think what places you have empty right now. Because what you're seeing, like with Faux, and you get one business coming out, another business comes in there, so you're not.
Well, that's why I asked, because Twist
But we don't
leaves.
track it.
It's an interesting thing to think about, because you have Twist that leaves, Faux that comes in. Well, if Twist didn't have to leave, for one reason or another, I'm not saying there, anything that the city could have done about that, obviously, but we have to be cognizant of that at the same time, because rather than trying to backfill somebody that's left, let's expand it out and continue to grow it and fill those other voids rather than trying to fill a spot that's been vacated.
Like Medicine Man, that whole area.
Right, Medicine Man.
We have some, I'll just be honest, when I look at some of those strip mall areas, some of those are very challenging locations for
Yeah, and
businesses.
to Mayor's point, they're expensive,
And they're expensive.
It took forever to fill that one in.
But how many people, it was Wildlife Pharmacy that took over Medicine Man. How many people even knew that was here? So, that kind of going back to my point, how many people even know that these are in our city? I still tell people about Hey J's and some of the other restaurants in Liberty Lake, and they live in Liberty Lake, and they don't even know about them.
Saturday, we were at Legends watching the Gonzaga do their thing. And our sports chef, the owner came Saturday, visiting and stuff. And he gave some good information, similar to what you're talking about with being in Idaho. He was giving an example that his type of business in Idaho runs about $6 and some odd cents for a server because of the minimum. Now keep in mind, they get tips on top of that. $6 and some odd cents over there. It's $18 for him here.
per hour.
To Katie's point, that makes it very difficult.
I think it's great that we talk about, get these businesses in, talk to these businesses, all things that sort of there. But I also think that we have to start maybe really working on a mindset that a developer or somebody who's going to open a business in Liberty Lake is not our enemy. they're a partner. And then we can't roll our eyes when we talk about development. We can't roll our eyes when we talk about somebody wanting to do subdivide and put in 50 or 60 homes or so. That's what builds this town. And we have, in my opinion, we have to be the people who smile and talk to these individuals and encourage them to invest in our city. Not roll our eyes at them or some of the things that has possibly happened in the past. I think that's just a wrong message we send out to individuals.
I agree with you. I think it's the wrong message, but at the same time, you know, I don't see us taking up our time to go out and actively seek more residential building. Okay? If it comes, and that's okay. But
I'm speaking strictly commercial. I'm not talking residential. I'm talking the commercial aspect that brings in sales tax.
well, you're talking about apartments, okay.
So Mike, I offer that the perception people have as developer enemy is built from their trying to break down that sense of community and quality of life for the family that people in the community are focused on.
Oh, I agree.
So
I agree with
to
you, Dan.
diffuse the perception of the enemy, you have to try and build the notion that the development contributes to that quality of life and the function of the family. So, that's just a perception.
Am I giving you the impression that I think the developer is not adding to the quality of life?
Well, no, I'm just observing the great moment of 100 people in the council chambers talking about how evil the apartments are because it's an attack on that quality of life and sense of community. Without really, I guess, the knowledge or understanding that actually it may build that. So there's, I'd say, a perception problem that maybe could be broken down with kind of some awareness and communication. That's just an observation.
For the citizens or the council?
No, the people, Mike, most.
Yeah.
The
I agree.
people. We, I think, in this role, play an important part of that, trying to provide visibility and understanding of what the proposed changes would either improve or affect that sense of quality of life in the family thing.
Oh, we agree.
RJ, when you talk about, earlier you mentioned trying to get back to, or ideally you'd like to see more of a 50-50 split. Have you assessed or thought about how we get there?
Well, the negative one would be we go into a recession and you get there because
Yeah, we
it
don't
drops.
want, we don't want that.
That's fine.
We just want to plan for worst case, but let's not decide everything.
If things are going good and you're getting the retail coming out here, and I'm looking at the zoning map up there, so your north side is almost already, there's already a developer out there who's
Yeah, he's not
got a
ready.
plan, he's building
He's
residential.
invested, right?
Right, so you got vested, so you got some areas where you're really focused on the map back there. The long haul, 50-50, because that means you're fully built out, your assessed valuation's where you're at, and you have a steady sales tax base that can handle the bumps of the retail area. I mean, the more you push on the sales tax means that you're building these large infrastructure type places, or large buildings that have more impact on the infrastructure.
So in an ideal world, and correct me if I'm wrong, we would like to have those smaller shops, but at the same time, we need some of those bigger ticket facilities
If it's
to help
possible.
offset, for sure.
I mean, those are the big, you're talking about the big ticket item, right? At
Yeah.
one time.
No, I'm sorry, not the one-time thing, but more like the
But-
Home Depots of the world.
You're looking for bring in a good steady sales tax that's not going to be affected by the economy,
Right.
or the boats, the RVs will be affected by the economy. Then you're looking for larger retail.
So, to go out on a limb, just watching development in our eastern Washington and even northern Idaho, I'm trying to think of the last time I saw a big box store get built. It's been years. Brick and mortar. They are, I know just across the border at Cabela's, they're having a heck of a time getting any big, platform. The only big platform building I've seen is hospitals, the one at, Providence at Sullivan. And I could be wrong, council member, but I haven't seen a Home Depot or a Costco or a Target or a Fred Meyer's. They've remodeled,
but I haven't even seen very many new businesses break ground in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. I could be wrong, maybe up north at Mead, I don't know.
North has developed quite a bit.
Pardon me?
North has developed some,
Yeah.
North of Spokane.
yeah.
Right.
And Southfield has,
South Hills, yeah,
South
definitely,
About 57.
yeah, they've definitely developed.
I think it'd be interesting to see what the citizens, if suddenly if Costco was going to be built here, how the citizens respond. I got
I
challenged.
think it'd be pandemonium.
I agree.
Costco
I think
can't
we
be-
have a lot of people going, oh, boy, we don't.
but it might be also where it depends on where it's at.
Yeah,
So if you get it out far
Closer to
enough
the
out
north-
east,
north side.
or on the east side of the, or on the west side of
Yeah,
town.
in the valley.
In the valley, close to the valley.
closer to Barker.
Close to it. Well, and it's interesting in the sense, we have the Camping World and the RV Center, and the only way to get there is actually go to the valley to get there.
Right.
You never see the impact of those larger units driving in there. So the residents don't even know it necessarily exists or it belongs in the city. So location sometimes stuff. I think what Moses Lake has going for them and how they've got themselves built out. Now they got some congestion down in the town, but they've got places located that you're on and off on the freeway.
It really is interesting when you realize that you have to go outside the city to get to Camping World and those.
Yeah.
And one thing is statistically with RV owners, they spend a lot of revenue when they're in town. You know, when we travel and stuff, we hardly ever ate inside the coach. We were out at restaurants all the time. And if you think about it, those individuals which come over there to have service and stuff done, they have to go into another city before they can even get back to us
Correct.
to spend any revenue. Interesting.
Well,
So with the,
so we went full circle.
So one of the things I hear you also talking to you is the ability you want to generate revenue to pay for the services that you have in Liberty Lake. So the assumption that we're all hearing is that you're liking the services that are being provided to citizens and you want to see that maintained to that
Quality of life.
level.
Quality of life.
Quality of life.
And Dan's right, okay? If we lose or let that quality of life disappear, there goes our city. It goes with it. I think it's the hardest thing to quantify, but the most beloved thing about the area is everybody will tell you the quality of life, whether they know what that means or not. It's quality of life.
I think it's a term that's thrown out a lot, but Betty and I talk about it. As much as we travel around, we still always get drawn back to Liberty Lake.
Yeah.
Always,
There's
always,
there's
always.
something about this
They're
place
just, the quality of life.
that's wonderful.
And I think it's one of those moving target things that you could say it's many different things.
But we, I think it's gonna be up to us and the staff and the mayor just to do a sales job when it comes to these commercial places, all right? Look, that is what's providing a nice portion of your quality of life.
Right.
So let's get behind them and not against them because you don't like the number of cars that don't go through your neighborhood to get there. Okay? Because they're not gonna go through any of these people's neighborhoods to get there.
with the new marble and tile company that has come into Liberty Lake.
Which one?
The new marble and tile company.
That's in the city of
That's actually in the valley.
Right, but something like that. It's not crazy busy, but they're large ticket purchase items.
Yeah, as long as they're not shipping it out.
Right, which is a key factor there.
That's what we run with Huntwood.
Yeah, it's gotta be stay home sales.
So they did look, Oregon, they were Oregon Tile and
Right.
something, and then they actually looked at Liberty Lake. And I'll be honest, sometimes out-of-town folks that come into Liberty Lake to build things like that, they look at our design code and the cost of land here, and they decide to build
Mhm.
somewhere else.
That store is a chain. They have quite a few of those around the United States.
Our
Again.
sign, between our sign code, the cost of land.
It has no benefit to you, really. I mean, even in sales tax, I mean, there's some transactional, probably the builder or the buyer's gonna go down there, I want this kind of tile put in my new house. That gets all underneath, there's no tax to that until the house gets sold. So it gets rolled up into a different product, which is either in the River District for catching it or someplace else. That's a,
It's just, I'm sure we're not gonna answer the question tonight, but at least we can come to a conclusion that everybody's on the same page as this is the type.
Where are we with priorities then?
Well, the priorities are, they're all great, how are we gonna pay for it? I mean, that's what the bottom line priority is. Okay, I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of these.
I would like to see us if we can focus on some of the main things. I mean, in no particular order, we've got Trailhead, Town Square, Orchard Park, Upland Trail, Northfield, things here that take money and either have to be done or have to be set aside. We have to maintain our existing buildings, what's that gonna cost? To anticipate that type of stuff. The thing that I refer to is what I enjoy warm and fuzzies of our roads and our trails and the quality of life that Betty and I and our family, kids that live here, participate in. I've always felt we stick to a budget and we don't get ourselves in financial difficulty, we will have all of that. We'll have the roads maintained, we're gonna have the trails maintained, we're gonna have the trees taken care of. That quality of life will be taken care of if we make sure that we are smart with our budget and our finances.
Well, I don't want to be a stick in the mud, but I'm coming back to, if we stay on the projection we're going, there's an apex just a few years away that tells us we're going to be in a deficit of just maintaining what we already got. Okay? And here we are trying to plan more projects for a date. I'm not saying that's wrong. Okay, I'm just saying, to my mind, how are we gonna pay for it? Not only how do we pay for what we wanna do, how do we pay for what we already got?
Well, that's what I feel when I talk about our priorities are, that these things that we have, what rises to the top? And in my opinion, I may have something that rises to the top, and then I look at how we're gonna pay for it, and we're not gonna have the funds for it, and it doesn't matter that I think it should be number one, it suddenly becomes number 10.
Let me just throw this out. I want to address this money thing in the term of 5 or 10 years. And, if you look at Cheney, they passed a parks, not a parks bond, but a
Airwood Heights did.
pardon?
Airwood Heights passed the parks bond.
No, I'm talking about, they have a parks tax for parks. They have funds that just raised for a park system or whatever. That's one thing. The Airway Heights passed you know this, chief, for the public safety, they passed a 0.1%.
Cheney.
Pardon?
Cheney.
Cheney did that, they did that too, or, I thought Airway Heights was part of it. So Cheney passed, again, if you sit down and say, okay, if you want to maintain your police department, and we're at this apex, then you look at your existing source of revenues, you look at your expenses, and you look at, well, now what is partisans are going to be supportive of that, and are we going to have a 0.1% sales tax for public safety? You look at this, how are we going to engage the community? This is the number one thing. What are your values? What are you willing to pay for? And if we get in that position, are you willing to pay this? But, growth will take us to a point, and you're right, at some point in time, we'll probably get to that apex. And then you just have to sit down and say, we need to bring in more cash. And that's...
I was gonna add, so also, as the city grows, every single department doesn't grow proportionally. So let me give you an example. As we get more people, obviously police grows proportionately. More people are using the library, more trails and things like that. But when you take City Hall, I don't think that, we have a finance person, we have a city clerk and a treasurer and myself and a planner and an inspector. And we don't grow proportionally with growth. Because, and this is just my opinion, is that this building right now, I don't know how many square feet it is, but this building can serve us for a very, very long time. Because I don't think that the number of people that work at City Hall is going to grow as our city grows.
I think people out in the field will grow because we'll have more roads and more parks and more police and, those kinds of things. But I don't think our city staff costs are gonna grow that much.
Even so, you know, you're taking care of 5 square miles. And that's what we're taking care of.
And then when you look at our city, you know, Eric, when you look at the map that's over Councilmember Kennedy's head, is all that yellow, kind of in that southeast part of town's all built in the 90s and 2000, 2010, all built out. So all the roads are about 20 years old, and you just incrementally put X number of dollars every year into taking care of your streets and your trails and those kinds of things. And then you go to, across the freeway, those homes are gonna be built, you know, in the 2017, 2027, 2037. And so we have a town that's fairly young, but you just incrementally take care of your parks and your infrastructure. But I don't see the head count at City Hall growing proportionately with our population. I could be wrong, but that's just something to think about. Payroll, I mean, our computer systems.
What is the noise from the blue zone of their interest of putting large type facilities like Home Depot in there as compared to something else?
So we're talking about the property that is on either side of I-90, basically from here to the west.
They're all over.
They're all- yeah.
They're everywhere. You know.
Nothing
You know,
definite?
you're talking Jim Quigley and the corporate park, I mean, they'd love to have, they just want to build that out, sell the dirt and build it out. Same thing on the north side, Toledo Station, you know, they have the Toledo Station plan out there, love to fill that out, you know.
They want to keep the options open because
The big driver there right now is moving forward on the interchange, or the Henry Road, which will basically open up that section because there's no circulation within that dirt from freeway to Mission to Country Vista. And that's what that big box, or what would be Cabela's, which, because we pitched Cabela's back before they built 2000, whatever it was, chief, you know, 2 or 3. You know, they were looking for the interchange. They were looking for connectivity to the freeway. I think, I just want to, before we get in too much further, I think, quite frankly, our priority should be to try to set our pillars as to importance. You know, I mean, we can talk about money and so forth, but I think, you know, is category 1 is that going to be a pillar? Or, you know, we talk about the business community, we talk about a local community engagement. What is it that people expect? You know, it's a good segue right here for a few minutes because we've had people sit here for an hour and a half listening to us talk. So I have 2 community members out there who know for sure too, want to. So any comments that you would have, you know, because you're category number 5.
Uh-oh. Sitting wrong place.
you're on the chair.
Next time I'm sitting back there. Just for the record, James Alexander, Legacy Ridge.
James, would you mind podium, please? I appreciate that, thank you.
Can you hear me from here? Do I need
Yeah,
to?
great.
Sorry. So again, James Alexander, Legacy Ridge, I've been here a few times. A couple of comments, hopefully I'll get most of them out. You talked about retail. If you're going to put a Costco on the other side of Harvard, then any highway traffic could get to either this side or that side of the interchange and get over there, so it had minimal impact. So that's one option before Henry goes in. And then, Mayor Pro Tem, you mentioned AJ's. I stayed at the motel over there, and when I saw that place with the name in a gas station parking lot, I wasn't going to go near it.
That's the other hard part.
Yeah, which brings
People
me
don't realize what's there.
Yeah, and it's reportedly a very nice restaurant with an
It is.
excellent chef.
Absolutely.
So I'm not trying to downplay the restaurant, but people talk about destination. So I've been in places where, granted, they're older, maybe San Jose, I
Willowglen.
can't remember There's a town there that has a huge oak tree that's God knows how old, a nice park atmosphere, a mission-style building with restaurants in it. And, sorry, I don't think of the name at this point, but it's very south of the freeway, just before you go out of town. If we were to try to do something like that here, where we would have buildings on two sides of the pedestrian area, and what's there is, you know, the destination restaurants, winery, tasting, brew pubs, that sort of thing, but have a park-like atmosphere where people enjoy walking around and stuff, and the parking, you know, away from where the pedestrians are, something like that. You can have a taste of Liberty Lake kind of thing, you know, festival to bring people in. And as far as where to put it, to me, the nicest parts of town we might take advantage of, I mentioned before, the river. If there's a way to get something like this sort of involved with the river, people can experience that. And I hate to say it, but if we could condemn property and buy out to the lake, you know, I personally would like to see Liberty Lake in the city limits. Granted, that's probably heresy. And then I was wondering about a survey of employees of all these companies. They drive in here, they have to eat lunch. They'd like to shop sometimes. Can we do a survey of them and the citizens and say, what retail is missing that we should have? Because I think several people have said what we need is retail to have a diverse sales tax base, and to bring in more revenue. And then perhaps staff could do a survey of the distance from Liberty Lake to popular and desirable retail. Because I know we have the mall and a bunch of stuff there, and then we got Idaho. So if you were here, and I don't know, Bed Bath & Beyond, just pick something, what would be a desirable retail that's far enough to the next store that would make sense for them to locate here? Then we could make a priority list of, you know, we'd like to have this, this, or this, and we could approach them and say, what's the chances of building that in one of the designated retail areas? And then this one. So one of the things in the previous mission statement is we're a golfing community. So could we look at having a golf tournament in the summertime that it would feature and utilize all three golf courses? There's a PGA tour apparently at a much nicer course, I'd have to say, but was it Indian Canyon or something?
Indian Canyon?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to figure out that. Anyway. Thoughts?
When
Thank
was
you.
that last survey that we did with the system?
Appreciate it.
5 years ago?
Yeah, Eastern Washington did a survey of who worked here. They actually went into the businesses and found out, and a lot of our larger employment centers have cafeterias. And generally, they get in their car and they come to work, and then they get in their car and go home, and they sometimes don't leave campus. But
No, I'm sorry, I meant in relation, we did a survey 4 or 5 years ago for the citizens, asking them what types of facilities they would like to see in Liberty Lake. We talked about,
parks and
we had talked about parks, we talked about restaurants, we talked about shopping facilities. It was a while
So we
ago.
did, it was
Yeah, that's where the
probably
community
5
center,
years
the
ago.
pool, and
That's
several other
the
things.
community
Yeah.
center.
Trails.
abandoned Michelle.
who did
Well,
that?
it's again, I mean, that's an upgrade. I mean, that's not, we did it 5 years ago, and, you know, we need to do it
Right,
regularly,
right,
right? I
so-
mean, it's
right.
not just like, hey, I mean, that's something I think would be again, going back to the, you know, kind of our strategic plan, our priority should be engaging the community as to their needs and their expectations. That should be a big priority for us, because we're not gonna get this thing overnight, and we're planning to take a year to get it. So, the priority to get that engagement started and the information out.
Yeah, that was kind of my point, we haven't done that in a
Yeah,
while.
so,
That's
right,
a good point.
so we could come out of this meeting and
That's a
say,
good point.
that's what we're gonna do.
No, but it's necessary.
Yeah,
It's
so,
not, we keep talking about it, to your point, on other things, you know, and maybe it's time for a little action. Yeah.
So what
But
I'm hearing,
you have something to do with that now, don't you? Aren't you getting ready to contract or something? with
so we
us?
do have money in the budget, none of it's been spent, or we haven't even begun to think about how to spend it. But if what I'm hearing, and I see it over there, survey city residents, and so there are companies that do this, and they do it a lot, and they can get a good pulse of what your community's thinking, and they generally run, $5,000 to $10,000, and they phone interview people, and they have the demographics, they have the voting history, they have income levels, where they live, how long they live, their age, everything, family status, and they get a pulse of your community. And if that's what you guys want us to do, we can certainly do that.
I
And it
think
might
we
be
should pull the
it'd be
trigger.
very educational.
I
For
think
me,
we should pull the
I think.
trigger on that, so.
Up that, yeah.
And I forget the,
Communication.
I think it's a great idea.
So there's three. Mikey,
Yeah,
what does Mikey think?
in the past, when that was brought up, I was in favor of that on several occasions. I would also like to have this type of discussion carry over to our next workshop when we have the rest of our counselors that can participate in this also.
I agree with that.
I'm in favor, certainly in favor of doing something like that.
Yeah. Let me just say my piece, and I won't repeat it again. These workshops were set up for workshops. And if somebody can't be there, hey, that's life, and I'm not begrudging anybody that can't make it, because I'm not gonna make a couple of them in a couple of months. So, but I'm not gonna go back and keep rehashing the same thing again to catch people up, okay? So, yeah, we can move the ideas forward, but I don't want that to stop or stand any of the good ideas that we do have to proceed on.
When we did discuss prior to ever doing this, that if somebody couldn't make a meeting,
Right.
an email would be sent out to them, here's what was discussed, here's what the majority was in favor of, and they can chime in if they want to, but
This is not a
we
bad
did
idea anyway.
have,
And so
we can
could-
recap very briefly and get that email out,
That's the way to say it, recap.
but
Well, the whole idea of this meeting was had right here, identify highest priorities, allocation of resources, things of that sort of thing. We're not gonna get that all done in this meeting, so it's gonna continue on.
No, but we can
And
get one.
I agree with you 100%, because I've been a strong advocate of individuals, if you can't attend, then you can't attend, as long as we have a majority here.
But I think that's a good place to start.
So we can, what we can do then, is, and I'm just throwing out an idea for the next meeting when we have hopefully more people that are here, is I'll do some research, find out what our options are, and then maybe what we could do at the next meeting is you guys could discuss what questions we want to ask our group.
I think what you,
I forget the individual's name that does this, is
Robinson Research,
Robinson Research.
so what I would suggest is that, not the next workshop meeting, but I would say the next council meeting, if you could come up with, that's a week,
February 20th.
could you come up with some ideas of this is, when we talked about Robinson Research, this is some of the criteria around that, and then we can start to
Right.
move forward a little bit, start to gather
So-
data.
Yeah, we could do that. So the committee workshop on February 20th is very full with a bunch of things that are
I'm
kind of
just
time
talking
sensitive.
about council meeting is February
About
20th.
moving forward.
Yeah.
We're just talking about, I know it's full.
I will have some information about the survey, and we'll have that as part of the
A
council.
dollar figure that, and how much would it cost, what's the time period, just put a box around it so we can go on it.
Let me explain from my opinion real quickly why I think this is so important, all right? We may not be able to hit all these categories tonight, but in the categories, that one thing that we can do tonight is to move that one agenda item forward, is to get in contact with people and see what they want. And this covers something in every category, all right, is aesthetics are important, fun retail, best use of your library, sense of community, medical. I mean, you can just pick all the things out of all these other sections that they're going to have the opportunity to have some input in, which is vital for us to continue. And I think, if nothing else, Mayor, thank you so much getting behind and promoting that, because that's the right thing to do at this point. Just let's get the feedback and let's get it consistently.
Yeah, two things. One, not just the residents, but the people, the employees who work here, because there's a bunch of people that will be spending on, so residents and.
We may not have a, well, yeah, we'll see.
Okay, and then second is, if somebody calls me on the phone and I don't know what it is I want to answer, and they don't do phone surveys, but there's SurveyMonkey and various other free means of creating a survey and having people respond online. Just
So
like-
the challenge we have, and I'll just put a word to the wise, when you do SurveyMonkey and those, you have no idea if they're residents or who they are. And so for instance, Jen has a survey out right now about park and rec things. And the disc golf community got a hold of that survey and they flooded it with, you'd think that disc golf was the #1 thing because 50 people on her survey filled out disc golf. And I'm not trying to say I like or don't like disc golf. Robinson Research, it's scientific and it's all based on data and statistics. And they actually look at your community and they know, I don't do it justice by describing it, but when I was in San Jose, we did it. They only had to call 800 people in a town of 1 million to find out what the statistic, because they do regression analysis and all this stuff. So it's very, very scientific. As much as I like SurveyMonkey and social media and all that, it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna help you.
We don't know how skewed.
We don't know
that
how
Facebook
skewed
poll
it is.
is.
It's only people that do social media. And so I would be a strong advocate for doing something very scientific by a firm that does this is their bread and butter. But.
And the other thing is to spread the word as to, you know, this is what's happening. So if you get, and let's say again,
It's
you know,
important.
you'll have so many telephone surveys, you'll get probably so many letters surveyed, you know, where a questionnaire type mailed is out survey. And that'll be, so everybody knows that it's kind of coming.
How long would,
Participate.
how long would you say that, if you had to estimate how long it would take for them to do the survey,
4 weeks.
just for them, no, for them to initiate the survey?
I'm thinking 4 weeks, and I had the conversation with him years ago, and he said that it would be in a town our size, it'd be about 324, that's the number I remember, 324 residents.
My point being is, when does the splash come out? And can there be an article put out on there to say that we're gonna be reaching out and doing surveys to get more people?
I guess that if you said April, and then again, we're setting the dates, right? I mean, we can't engage them until we bring that back to the council.
Right.
So generally, the cutoff for like the April splash would be like March 15th to 20th.
Yeah, mid-month.
Mid-month.
So if we're notifying our citizens as much as possible, we're gonna try to do a survey to see what your guys' wishes are within our community.
Little input.
Please participate.
April May is a great time.
They're going to be more prepared.
We'll have more people home too.
And you'll find, yeah.
Katie, let me ask this question. When we do something like that, we give suggestions of certain things we want to ask how to serve. If I understand correctly.
Correct.
I would hope that while we do that, we really put some thought into it, that maybe even asking some specific things, such as the library, that put into the survey, do we have sufficient space there? How do we better utilize that space? And some of these other priorities that we have.
Some of the things we're gonna have to realize is sometimes another, I know it's hard with this group, not individuals, but as a council, of saying hands off, let the professionals do what they do best, okay, and that's run the survey. By the time we get through with all this, and we want this included, we want that included, and it can't be matched to their answer system, okay, and it requires written paragraphs to tell you how they can answer a question, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So, while I think I would just love to have input, I also think that sometimes you just gotta say, let the pros do it.
You drill down after you have the survey, they start to drill down in
Yeah.
subsections.
And they move down, they know it's important, it's not their first city they've done.
The last time we did a survey, my concern with that survey is that we specifically asked the question, you want to have this, you want to have this, you want to have this. And that's what don't really think that gives us a true thing that a professional organization can bring to us.
We'll have a professional survey done this time, right? Let's bring that back for
So let me,
the criteria of the box.
so it's 10 minutes late, do we kind of want to wrap up as far as I can tell? So the action items would be to contact a survey firm. And I'll give you an update on February 20th. Okay? Then, the other is, we'll type up these notes and we'll share them with everyone, so everyone has a chance, or the folks that weren't here were able to weigh into it. Do we want to wait till March 13th? That's the Tuesday after March 6th. But do we want to wait till March 13th, or do we want to have the next workshop on February 27th?
Let's do February 27th.
I would think the sooner the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
February 27th?
While we have momentum, let's continue.
February 27th. And at that meeting, so that's our next workshop on strategic planning. What do we want to be on the agenda?
Wouldn't we just continue on what we're working on now? Priorities, allocation of resources, financial discussion, sustainable resources. That was important in this meeting, wouldn't it be also important
It's your
in that?
meeting, so.
I think a couple items we want to, at some point, we need to address. And I know that Katie would like us to try to have it addressed by springtime. One of them being irrigation. Are we going to maintain what we have for a year? Are we going to, I'm not, just thinking about this, and for all of us to think about, when we do have the conversation, are we going to move on it this year? And then the second item being the property that we've discussed with the 3 acres that is potentially available to us to purchase. I think those are 2 items that we need to, at some point, have some discussions on.
Are we going to receive an update from when you wrote that letter of interest?
Yeah, so tonight's election night, so I don't know, and I have not had a conversation with Ben in
Okay.
weeks.
Thank you.
And that's going to help dictate what happens, obviously, with that one.
So why don't, see, the council meetings in March, is March 6th, and then March 20th. I would love to bring back more information. I have some more information about other property that I've been in conversation with. Also, nothing's firm. but
Well,
yeah,
we've
just
got our
talk-
meeting on February 20th too.
Yeah, okay, so do you want me to talk about property on February 20th?
Let's, Shane,
Yeah.
if everybody thinks it's important that we spend at least a current workshop time and date on clearing up some items that are already on agendas, instead of marking a strategic meeting, let's just handle agenda items and let them bring forward 1 or 2 items that they need definite answers on.
I think for the February 20th meeting, if we can get an update on the school, what's gone on, what the outcome is going to be,
Okay.
what the property situation is. I mean, that will help at least dictate it. Are we going to talk about irrigation or are we going to talk about the property? Right?
Okay, and then maybe on the 27th, at the strategic plan, we can talk about the irrigation? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, we just don't call it strategic,
Okay.
we have February 27th about staff items. And send us a list of what you would like to have some outcomes on.
Okay,
Perfect.
and I'll just put other
Yeah.
to be determined, okay?
That way we know what we're gonna meet for, we're just meeting for those items.
I would think the discussion about the irrigation is not going to be a long, involved discussion. I mean, we've talked about that.
May not be, but at least we're getting it.
We want to lay out options
Yeah.
and what the implications of those options are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we can make a decision.
Absolutely.
Sounds good to me.
Perfect.
Anything else?
So, I see you're anxious to get out of here, but.
Yeah, I am.
You know, we're here to hear citizen comments before we vote, so.
We already heard one.
Anything you got, Tom, anything from you?
I got some ideas for like, thanks.
Perfect.
So, okay, so, all right. So
We like that.
no more citizen comments? No, you're the only, your last citizen, Katie, anything from you?
No, I'm sitting there.